In most industries, and especially ours, multitasking is seen as a strength. The ability to juggle multiple things at once, to stay on top of everything, to respond quickly, shift gears, and keep moving. It's often what people get recognized for, but there's also a point where it starts to break down, where being on top of everything starts to feel like being pulled in every direction, where you get to the end of the day and think, I was busy all day, but I don't feel like I actually got anything done. I think both you and I can relate to that feeling.
Oh, yes.
Most people assume that means they need to work harder, or get more organized, or just push through it. But what if the issue isn't effort? What if the way we're working is actually creating the problem? Because here's what the research shows: your brain doesn't actually multitask, it switches. And every time it switches, there's a cost, not just in productivity, but in energy, focus, and stress. So today we're going to break down what's actually happening in your brain when you multitask, why it feels productive even when it's not, and how this pattern can quietly lead to chronic stress and eventually burnout. Let's get into it. Hi, everybody. My name's Jeff,
And I'm Rochelle.
and this is Burnout Banter. Before we jump into today's episode, remember to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen so you can stay up to date with the latest banter. So I imagine multitasking is pretty normal for you. I know it is for me.
Absolutely. Multitasking is frequently listed in marketing job descriptions, honestly, like must be able to juggle multiple things at once.
I saw that as even in my own job description, and it's like, oof, it's not something we should be advertising.
No, I rank that right up there with must be a rock star. Like, oh, okay, cool. Nope,
Yeah,
that's a job for me.
just means your job's not very well defined.
Exactly.
So our industry makes it feel necessary, but at the same time, I would argue that it doesn't work. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. I think it's just normalized behavior. We multitask because we have to, because of the structures around us and how our offices and our cultures are set up, but not because it's what we should be doing.
Yeah. You get put in situations, right, where you're trying to get something done and somebody schedules a meeting. And instead of feeling like we can say no or challenge the time of the meeting because we're trying to get 20 people together for this meeting, then we end up saying yes. And I'm sitting in the meeting and doing my stuff at the same time. I pretty much did that all last week. That was like my go to thing because I was trying to get something done and I was in a bunch of meetings and I was working the entire time, not paying a whole lot of attention to the meetings that I was in.
It used to be that that was like the unspoken thing, like, oh, I'm going into this meeting and I'm going to multitask. And it's like, hush, hush. People very like proudly, not proudly, but like nobody hides it that I see anymore. You are in a meeting, you can see, and someone's like, "Oh, I'm busy. I'm just gonna like, while you guys discuss, I'm gonna just do this thing real quick." And then you can see them like on their Teams or on their Slack or whatever it is. And then you're doing the same thing. Like it has just become normalized. And so we just accept it and then allow it to continue. Whereas
One of my,
on a time, I would have called you out so hard, Jeff, for working in my marketing meetings.
I probably would add my camera off.
That's what I'm saying, it's normalized now, so you don't have to, like, you can see me typing, and you know I'm not typing to you, but you know that I'm just really busy, so
Like, I do like to put my whatever I'm doing on my screen right below my camera. So it looks like I'm like looking at the screen, but I'm not really.
I'm just like, "Oh, I'm pretending looking down at this person in the bottom," or I'm not even gonna hide it, I'm multitasking. "Sorry, you gave me too much to do, I
Yeah.
gotta figure out how to get it done."
So I think we've promoted it in a way that's probably not good, right? So the ability to be uber responsive makes us seem valuable. And then I think we're in some ways proving how capable we are by handling multiple things at the same time. multiple projects at the same time. It's something, we've just made it a strength, something that we promote in people. I wouldn't say people choose to function in that manner either. I was in a 4-hour page turn 2 weeks ago for a project where we were going through each discipline, and it was scheduled for 4 hours. So you would think that would be plenty of time to get through everybody's work. We went into the end of the fourth hour before we ever got to electrical. And while there might have been one or two things that came up in the 4 hours, I can guarantee you it was not worth me sitting in there at $300 an hour for 4 hours to pick up one or two things. But if I were trying to sit there and pay attention for the 4 hours, I would have been going out of my mind.
I can't handle when I get scheduled for a 2-hour meeting. Like, I just don't have that attention span anymore, which is terrible. I think that's another topic, but we've just adapted to having to manage our time in this awful way. We were getting stuck and stuff like that. Oh, yeah, set aside 4 hours. Of course, you're gonna wanna multitask.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thankful because I remember doing things like that where we would go in person before COVID and sit in a room for 4 hours straight and we didn't necessarily have laptops either. So it made it real hard to do something else.
This
Um,
don't
and I mean, there's benefit that comes out of that too, because you learn about other disciplines. But, I think that's just not a great use of time, just my opinion. But
die.
you got emails coming in all the time, Teams, Slack, you're in meetings all the time, deadlines. Like, we've created this environment that is normal. Then this is just how we function. And, we think we're multitasking, but we're really not.
The hallmark of our industry. This is how we do it. We've just changed, "This is how we do it," to, "This is how we do it."
Yeah. And I think everything's urgent, right? Like, that's become a real problem where everything's urgent at the same time. I think we can just keep knocking things out while we're in a meeting, or I'll just knock this out really quickly when an email comes in, and it really messes with our brains.
Context switching is a plague.
Yeah, so I think we've created an environment where we feel like we have to multitask. Because I've taken classes where it talks about how bad this is and how much you should try not to do it. And I will try for a little while, and then I'm like, I just can't. I cannot sit here in this thing that I shouldn't be in the first place and pay attention when I have all these other things to do.
Deprogramming the multitasking is a real and very difficult task. It ties into, like, weird I'm gonna take us back to growing up, Jeff. Not quite back to the Babysitters Club or the Adventures in Babysitting, whichever one I can never remember. But we used to be able to be bored. Like, I do remember just hanging out and staring at the ceiling and thinking, not because I didn't have things to do, but, like, that was just a way to spend time. We are not capable of that because there is so much available to us and so many demands on our time and our attention that it's not just that you have other work tasks, it's that you just don't know how to do that anymore. You don't know how to shut down and just be in one thing anymore. You have the big screen going, you're on your small screen, you're on your medium screen. You have multiple tabs open on your medium and your small screens. You're flipping channels at the same time. Like, we can't just zone anymore.
It's reading something about how Netflix has started to dumb down their scripts and be very prescriptive about this is what's happening, this is why it's happening, so that people can understand what's going on while looking at something else instead of actually watching the show.
I saw we had to have been reading the same thing. I was in like a writer's forum or something, and somebody was like, I don't understand. Like, the scripts that are coming out are so on the nose that it's not enjoyable to watch anymore. And I was like, aha, you are not a split screener, which is terrible.
Yeah, that it really is. I thought it was interesting. I never heard this idea in researching this of not multitasking, but switching tasks, which makes sense. I just never heard it described that well.
You've never heard of context switching?
No, I don't think so.
Oh my goodness. I have, like, daily conversations about how context switching is my number 1 drain. Not just because I'm bouncing between, like, 3 different versions of Rochelle, right? Day job, side jobs, whatever. But even in one of those, right, you're context switching between one task and the next, and so your brain has to flip. And it's like a really big buzzy term right now where context switching and they're trying to like figure out what it is about your brain. Nobody fully understands why context switching can make you as physically exhausted as like running a marathon.
I think it makes sense because, well, and I think we'll talk about why it makes sense, but it
Oh, you got us covered. I'm shocked that context switching was new to you
no,
this
I
episode.
I had never heard of that. I know, like, our brain so, like, if I'm chewing gum and doing something else, right, where there's not a thought involved in what I'm doing, then we can do 2 things at one time, but other than that, you cannot do 2 cognitive things at the same time. They require you to actively think about what you're doing.
Fold your laundry, watch Netflix. Cool. Don't watch Netflix and scroll TikTok at the same time. Can't do it.
Or do you even folding laundry, your laundry would be better folded if you probably just focused on that, and you may not miss what's going on in the show if you weren't folding laundry, but
As someone who guilty, just got called out for this by my sister, lives out of her laundry basket because I'm one of those people, my laundry would be great if I folded it during Netflix. Could it be better? Probably.
my kids.
I have free will as an adult, and that is how I've chosen to use it by saving the 30 minutes on laundry.
So, according to the American Psychological Association, task switching can reduce your productivity by up to 40%.
And that does not surprise me. I know you have this spec here that it came from UC Irvine, but the very common cite statistic that I always hear cited is it takes 20 minutes for you to move from one idea to the next. So if you have back to back to back meetings and they're on different topics, it takes you about 20 minutes into the next meeting to have switched from the last one. That sucks.
Even if you were to give yourself time in between meetings, if you go do something else in between, now you've introduced a new thing that is just kicking that can down the road, too. So,
Yeah, it's wild.
yeah, and I thought it was interesting. The University of London found that multitasking can cause a temporary drop in your IQ of about 10 points, which is similar to you missing a night of sleep or being under cognitive impairment due to the use of substances.
I saw this in the outline and I had to go like, I trusted you, but I had to go look it up because I was like, there's no way I'm losing IQ points because I'm context switching, because I feel very powerful when I'm context switching. I'm like, I got this done and that done and this done and that done. And I'm all over the things and I made my list and I eventually checked them all off. You don't feel dumber. You feel empowered, exhausted.
Yeah, I've also heard the statistic if you're, again, multitasking, right? Driving and looking at your phone, the impairment is like you're drunk. That's how much the multitasking of doing both things is cognitively impacting you.
I minored in psychology, and at the time, cell phones were still becoming widespread. So there were a lot of, like, studies that were happening at the time, and the number of, like, insane YouTube or study videos that we had to watch that were like, "This is the equivalent of your attention being pulled away for a second and how long it takes you to put it back on the road," was alarming. Alarming. It definitely made me rethink not using my phone while driving.
Went down in the kitchen a couple weeks ago and Kellen had just made lunch and he was, he's on his phone while he was doing it. And the oven mitt was in the cat water because he just could not do both things at the same time.
Oh
And
my
I was like, come on, bro. Like, put your phone down and take the oven mitt out of the water.
oh my god.
So I think it's accurate. I guess I could say I see his IQ drop all the time when he's multitasking. If you've worked a night without sleep and continue to try to work the next day, like it is a groggy feeling. And so, I do think we think we're pushing harder, but in reality, we're less productive we're not able to switch between tasks as well as we think we are, and we're actually maybe a little bit dumber for doing it.
Yeah, like, we're not computers. I know that everyone says, like, "Oh, your brain is like the smartest supercomputer you'll ever have." Not really. It still has to load up essentially the program of whatever you're focusing on right now, right?
Yeah.
I think I hesitate to bring this up because I think it originates with a comedian and is actually unsavory, but it's a good analogy, so I'm gonna use it here. But he told this joke about, like, men's brains are like looking at a nicely organized shelf of boxes. They take a box down, they open it up, the topic is dinner, they talk about dinner, they close the box up, they put it back on the shelf, take the next one down, open it up, we talk about cars, close it up, so on and so forth, right? And then the butt of the joke was like women's brains are like spaghetti. You start here and you take some turns and you end up over here. I think all brains are actually the box brains. We just all trying to function like spaghetti brains, and then we can't remember where we went and the detours we took, and things get all confused in the middle, and we end up somewhere, maybe having walked into a room and forgotten why we walked into that room, right? Because we should have just taken down the box that said, "You've walked in the laundry room to get your laundry," or "You walked into the kitchen to start dinner," or whatever. But instead, we were, spaghetti thinking because we need to give ourselves the time to load up whatever the next thing is, and we just don't anymore.
I think that idea of walking into a room and forgetting why you went in there is proof of this idea that I'm still thinking about what I was doing before I got up and walked into the room. Like it doesn't just go, right? So that quick check of email is not a quick check of email for your brain. Your brain is now bogged down by whatever it just looked at. Every time we switch tasks, our brain has to unload one thing and reload one thing, just like you're talking about. Then we're trying to do three or four or five things at a time and we confuse the heck out of it.
Right.
I thought it was interesting this idea of like trying to read two different books, a paragraph at a time each. And that's what you're constantly doing is switching from paragraph to paragraph to paragraph to paragraph. How quickly would you get lost in whatever it is that you're trying to read?
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about that. That's a nightmare.
These are numbers too, right? Like you could sit here as an employee and say, okay, well, I'm 40% less productive. But as an employer, that means out of every hour that I work, $140 out of 300 is going down the toilet.
Right. Yeah, like, you can put dollar signs to these stats.
I think the key thing too is that when you start to do this and you make it a habit, it actually alters how your brain functions.
That's what I was trying to get at with the whole, like, back in the day, I feel like I'm slowly more and more every day turning into, like, man who shouts at clouds, old man who shouts at sky or whatever. But back in the day, we could be bored. You could just do that one thing. You could just stare at the wall or, like, just get completely lost in a book. I remember reading entire books in an afternoon, and now I can get through, like, a chapter, and I'm like, "Oh, I have to be doing something else. Surely I can't just read the next chapter." It's very weird.
Yeah. So our brain has limited working memory. It can remember about 3 to 5 things at one time, which we all try to cram way more than that into our brains, which is why we can't remember anything. Especially when it's full of like Bronco statistics and music, concert ideas, and, we're filling it with stuff that may not be as important or maybe more important, I would argue.
I would rather have that stuff in my brain than work stuff in my brain, but.
Yeah. And so what we're doing when we're multitasking is we're essentially forcing our brain to hold multiple unfinished tasks simultaneously. We just end up stacking open loop after open loop after open loop in our brain all day long. And that's why you feel exhausted having done that, even if you didn't finish anything.
Yeah, that's why it feels like you ran a marathon at the end of the day, and you're fried even though you sat in a chair and stared at your computer for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, the other side of that is that every switch that you go through creates a small dopamine reward.
So we really are chemically training ourselves that this is the
Yeah.
way.
Your brain wants to crave novelty and interruption. You talk about not being able to sit there and be bored working on something. It's because we're looking for something else. I was even just having this thought because I sat here for like 4 hours straight, which is unusual because I don't tend to like to do that. But I was working on something for coaching, new course that I'm getting ready to launch, and I was just intently working on it. And even though like things were a few steps forward, a few steps backwards, like I didn't have music on, I was just fully focused on what I was doing. And then I was taking that and thinking about when I check engineering drawings, that can take a block of time, but I need something else going on because I'm not engaged
Right.
in what it is that I'm having to do.
Yeah, I need,
Uh,
like, sound. If I'm doing certain things, I have to have a podcast or music or, like, cat that's terrible, be catching up on a meeting recording that I missed or was double scheduled for or something like that. During certain tasks, I can't just get into them, but, of course, I would argue that I'm not listening to that thing while I'm also working on this, but it does feel better.
yeah. Yeah, so we're not just getting distracted, we train ourselves to be distracted. And our brain starts to prefer switching over focus. And if that's why if you've ever tried to then do the opposite and actually, like let's say I'm going to set a timer and work on one thing for 90 minutes, most of us can't do it because we have trained our brain to not be able to do that.
90 was aspirational. I usually do like 15, 20, and then if it goes really well, then I do another 15 or 20. If I say like I'm gonna do this for an hour, that is too much for me to commit to.
You could train yourself. It's just like training a muscle. You could get to the point where you could do it for 90 minutes, but you got to train yourself.
That you have to build up.
Yeah, I saw a statistic that the average person checks their email once every 5 to 6 minutes,
That d
which is
I
crazy.
have been actively training myself not to look at my email so much, not to look at my LinkedIn so much. I will say that my phone has gone off at least 7 times in the last 4 or 5 minutes, and I'm still up here, I'm still looking at the screen. I haven't checked, but man, it is burning my pocket so bad. I want to know, not that I can do anything about it, I just want to know what is trying to pull my attention away right now.
Yeah. So
Would be stressful for me to not check.
these open loops that we keep in our brain or these unfinished tasks actually become unresolved problems that our brain is trying to actively solve in the background, whether we're conscious of it or not. And our nervous system is constantly activated, which, as we all know, leads to stress and then ultimately to burnout. And it frequent interruptions increase our stress, they increase our heart rate, they increase our fatigue, but we're then training ourselves to desire the frequent interruption too.
Humans are just determined to like all of the things that are bad for us. We're
Yeah.
just wired that way.
Yeah. I mean, I do think technology has played a big role in that too, right? Because there used to be, there was no distraction, right? Your kids are at school. They had to go talk to the office to get somebody to call the parent at their office. Like that was the only time you could ever be distracted by your kids. Now they can just text you whenever they want. And, whether you're focused on something or not, if they're having a problem, it becomes something that you get pulled into and are trying to help resolve. And the same thing happens on our projects, right? I could be actively working on one project and the another one has an emergency and now we're dropping everything to resolve their emergency. And nobody wants to, I was in a meeting last week where I have two projects that are due at the same time and I was trying to get one done and I wasn't getting all the information that I needed. So I guessed. I made an educated guess. We'll have to go back and fix it, but it's good enough that they could go in and get a permit off of it. They didn't want to hear that I had another project that also had a deadline, right? Like, I don't know in what world we assume that that's just nobody's working on anything else. My thing's the most important, and it's just not real.
Calendar management is something I fight with constantly, where people just like put things on there because there's empty space. And the number of times I have to remind people, like, yes, there might be open space there because I don't have a meeting scheduled, but I do, in fact, need to work. I have other things I do than just like meets.
You
And
do?
oh, people all day. It's shocking, isn't
I
it?
just get out of meetings, and if I don't have another meeting, I just sit there and don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, I'm just a little robot, so when I'm not on screen, I just, like, power down and hang out in the corner and wait for the next call, and then I power up and I come back to the screen, of course. Hi, you're still the robot
I
here.
knew it was the case.
Absolutely. Really, if somebody could make a Rochelle robot to do that, that would be fantastic, side note. But,
A meeting robot? That sounds amazing.
yes, I'll download everything in my brain to whatever AI fuels it, but she needs to go to the meetings for me, so I can do the deep work because I do enjoy the deep work.
I like that idea. That's what we need to invent. We're very close. I've seen people attend meetings that aren't even in the meetings, and then you get the summary of them attending the meetings, and it's like, you weren't even there. How do you know what we talked about?
Yep,
'Cause your robot was there.
yep, we're close. So
So
we're
multitasking can increase the number of errors you make by up to 50%.
that does not surprise me. It's always embarrassing to open a proposal that you submitted and won, especially to me. Open that up and you see like, "Oh, I have a grammatical error here," or "This number is wrong," or the most embarrassing one, "I didn't change the claim to the project name on this page," and somehow they either didn't notice or let it slide. Always embarrassing to see that. I have noticed an increase in those, not after submission, but, like, on final reviews. Those are things I normally catch in first or second pass, but because I context switched so much now, I'm not catching them until final. Like, "Oh, that's bad." Are getting caught. Would like to disclaim that. I'm sure some of them are slipping through. I'm a human. Proposals are team sports, somebody check me. But the number of them who that make it through a final is very alarming. The number of emails I send out with spelling errors is also gross and alarming to me, and that drives me bananas. Like, I'm not surprised that we are increasing the errors that we make.
Just goes to show you the person reading the proposal isn't paying full attention to it either.
Was just gonna say
So
that
I
we're
guess we're covering
busy,
each
but
for each other.
we're all too busy and none of us are paying attention. So we're all just vibe checking over here.
When we mess up and make these mistakes, right, then we create rework, which again just adds to the level of pressure and the amount of work that we have to get done. The amount of rework we do is crazy because you're just waiting on other people to do things and then they get it to you last minute or you have to guess and then you're redoing it just like I did. Yeah. So if our work never feels complete and everything feels partially done, we feel very busy the whole day, but we never finish anything. We never feel like we finish anything because I would say it's not true that we don't finish anything. Although maybe not. I don't know that drawings ever get finished. They
They'll
just get
just get
built
built eventually,
and
right?
corrections get made and there's mistakes in what's built and so maybe it never does get finished. But we create this internal pressure, right? Of I should be further along, I'm behind, I need to respond faster, which is internal pressure a lot of times, more so than external pressure. And then when we do take a break, we don't actually recover
Right,
because we're still mentally carrying these tasks with us.
right.
Our brain never resets or rests.
Yeah, I would argue that, like, even those of us who are fortunate to take time off, it takes longer to get into that brain off frame of mind because of all of those, like, mental browser tabs that you still have open before you left, and longer to get back into the swing of things when you return, because now you have to reopen and get familiar with all of those again.
Yeah.
And I don't think they ever actually fully closed down, so they just kind of follow you around and plague you for your time off.
Yeah. So, burnout's not just a symptom of how much work we have, it's also about how fragmented our attention is over time and this level of stress that stays activated all the time. So, we keep doing it because we want to be responsive. We fear falling behind or trying to prove we're capable.
Right.
We don't want to let other people down.
Other people look really good at this, so I also have to be really good at this multitasking thing.
Yep. So I think some things we can do is to actually name what we're doing. Stop calling it multitasking and start calling it switching. because I don't think we'll see that as desirable
Right.
as we see multitasking.
I'm switching during this meeting. Yeah, no, that sounds bad.
I'm switching. What? Excuse me, did you say my name? I was switched on to something else. It's my
That sounds
favorite. I wasn't
terrible.
paying any attention in this meeting that I'm in. Could you repeat what you just said? And then the rest of us who were paying attention get to listen to the whole thing again.
I get so embarrassed for other people, but very much for myself when that happens. I think my anxiety is the only reason that I pay attention in meetings sometimes because I'm so terrified of that happening to me.
No, this is just having done this for a long time, but I've gotten to the point where I just say, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. What was the question?
It depends on the meeting. If I'm there and I didn't need to be for like 90% of it, sure. But if I'm supposed to be an active participant and I just accidentally checked out, if I switched and I shouldn't have switched, man, I'm mortified.
Y'all were talking about architectural structural coordination for a long time, and I didn't understand any of it. So I stopped paying attention. And then I heard my name.
I give you a pass on that one.
Create single task windows. We've talked, I think we've talked about like time blocking before, but 20 to 25 to 45 minutes, one task, one priority task thing that you're doing in that time frame. I know you love my guy Darren Hardy, but he talks about closing open loops, right? So if I'm working on something and I've given myself a certain amount of time to work on it, I close the open loop. I take the thing, put it back in the box, I put it on a shelf where I know where I'm going to go get it the next time I'm going to work on it. So writing down something that you haven't finished or all the things that you haven't finished can help close that loop because then your brain knows it's there. And then having a time when you're going to come back to it, right? So if it is important, I can't do this right now, but tomorrow I have time at 9 o'clock to work on this again.
Right.
Ugh, I wish I could make this one a lot easier, but redefine responsiveness that not everything requires an immediate reply from us. We used to all hop on airplanes and not have Wi-Fi, and the world didn't end when people couldn't get a hold of us and we couldn't answer something immediately. So I would argue we don't have to be on an airplane for that to still hold.
I still hold firm on my air travel is my time. I can connect to the internet. I choose not to. I don't care if I'm traveling for work or for me. I'm allowed. I'm already in an uncomfortable space. I don't want to be uncomfortable and using my brain at the same time. But outside of that, it is so hard to train yourself to not respond immediately. We're a Slack company, and I have been forcing myself, even if I do have an immediate answer, I've been trying to train myself to use the remind me function instead of the reply button. And maybe I do reply in like 5 or 10 minutes, but I try to just flag everything as remind me in an hour and then I will respond. Literally just to start training myself that not everything needs an answer from me right now.
I love that. And I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think the idea of looking at it to hit remind me is pulling you out of whatever it is that you're doing?
Oh, it absolutely is. It is. The baby steps, right, Jeff? Baby steps.
Baby
Step
steps
1
for sure.
is my little dopamine hit from checking it so I can triage it and say the world's not going to end, but I'm not investing the additional, like, cognitive time in providing a good answer or what is probably just a crappy answer because I'm gonna fire it off real quick and then go back to what I was doing. Remind me is the stopgap until I can get to the point where I don't look at those messages until a predetermined, predefined time. I so respect people who say, like, between 2 and 3 o'clock is when I check my Slack and emails. Like, how? How do you do that?
You're on an airplane, they wouldn't be able to get a hold of you anyways.
Are you on an airplane every day? Like,
Hmm. Yes, I'm on a mental airplane. We just need to sing ourselves. I'm leaving on my focus time jet plane. Don't know when I'll return again.
that's our T-shirt, Jeff. I'm leaving on my focused jet plane. Done
Great
firing
rendition,
messages.
wasn't it?
What?
I couldn't quite break into song, but everybody knew what I was up to.
Absolutely. You do
Nobody
not
wants
want
to hear me
to
sing.
either, but I got you.
And then the last thing is to have some transition time that you predict, 2 to 5 minutes between tasks. And that is not 2 to 5 minutes where I'm running to the bathroom in between meetings because nobody gave me a break.
But it's real.
And then that, like, almost, eating the ginger to cleanse your palate, right? To reset your brain before you take on something new.
It was an Instagram, like, satire account, but I did see this woman who, in between each of her meetings, just lays on the floor and lets her dogs pile on her. I do that sometimes. I'm
Oh,
like,
Joe.
I have an awkward 2 or 3 minutes. I'm just gonna lay on the floor, puppy snuggle with Taco, and then move on to the next meeting. Not often, I'm usually checking those Slacks in between, but sometimes it's nice.
So that's the downside to multitasking. It can lead to higher stress and burnout. And I would argue that the less we do it, the more productive we actually are, even though that seems counterintuitive. And how do we resolve the issue of not being in meetings that we don't need to be in? I don't know, but as soon as I figure it out, I'll let you know.
That's one where I have gotten very fearless about being, "Hi, I noticed this meeting popped up on my calendar. Can you tell me what my role in it will be?" I used to be terrified to do that. Now I am ruthless because I just don't know what half of these things are. I have clients that throw me on stuff. I have my teams that put me on stuff. I have pie stuff that shows up, and I'm like, "Did I forget? What is this?" So if you can't give me a good reason for why I'm there, then I respectfully decline or I mark it as a maybe, and it just kind of depends on what's going on that day.
I've stopped attending a lot of things where I don't really feel like it's important that I be in it. But it's very difficult on project meetings to say, I don't really think you're going to talk about anything that relates to me, so I don't need to be here.
Then I'm off camera in my hoodie and I am doing something else.
Yes.
And unapologetically, not even multitasking. I am in the meeting, but I am not trying to pay attention to it.
No,
Sorry.
the camera off is a great indication of that I am not paying any attention to this at all. And I'm only here because you made me.
And now it's time for burning questions.
All right. You ready for our burning question?
Bring it on.
All right. Our burning question today comes from the live session at SMPS SRC. We have some leftover questions that we weren't able to get to during the hour that we had. So, this person's question was, how much burnout do you see in unclear ownership between tasks between departments? I would say most of it.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that ties directly into our multitasking conversation. Because when things have to flow between departments and it's unclear, then there's a lot of, like, duplication of effort or rework because of guesses that were made or assumptions that were made, and that just causes so much stress.
One of the things I always tell my people is even if you're not going to get to something right now, I would appreciate knowing that you saw it. Because as soon as I know that you saw it and you're on it, I get to close that loop in my brain that is worrying, is this person going to take care of this? And I think when we have unclear ownership between tasks, between departments, we never get to close that loop, right? It's always going to be in the back of my mind, is this person going to take care of this? Am I going to get to the point where I need to now jump in and take care of this because they're not going to? And that stress just kind of hangs over everybody, especially somebody who's more responsible. I'm sure there are people who can just let things go and whatever happens, happens. But I think for people who take responsibility for something other people are involved in too, I think that can be a really hard thing if it's not clear who's doing something or whose job it is, or, if I'm going to get pulled in a million different directions by different departments who are talking to each other or different projects or whatever.
I am staring down all of my marketers who have savior complexes where we just take care of the things because we are capable and know we can do it. And we sit back and we watch, and then someone either doesn't step up to do the thing that they were supposed to do or we hoped they would do or thought they would do but didn't clarify because cross department collaboration is tough. and we just do it and then fry. So you're speaking straight to all of my marketers here.
It feels good to be the hero. I've gotten to the point recently where if somebody doesn't get something done that I need, I'm just going to throw a note on the drawing and say this wasn't done. And when it is done, then I'll finish it. And if it doesn't get done, then I won't. But I can't force somebody else to do their job. And if the company's not going to take responsibility for that either, then there's really not much I can do.
It's a very healthy outlook.
I've tried it on a couple things recently and nobody even seemed to care. And before I would have been worried about it and trying to get it done at the last minute so everybody looks good. And I'm just like, nope, they didn't finish this. Lighting didn't get done in an appropriate amount of time for me to do the rest of the things that needs to happen with it. So it's not going to be done.
Yeah, yeah. You can't control it. You can't control it.
Yeah.
You can ask for clarification. That's enough.
I think in some ways, right, we need to train our brain to close the open loop when we did our job,
Right.
not based on whether somebody else does their job as a result of us doing our job, because we don't have any control over that. And I think that's hard.
I was just going to say that is one I will struggle with for a long, long time, but would be very healthy to be like, I have done my thing. Go forth and do your thing. I am done and I'll be over here. No, I need to make sure that they have taken the thing that I've done and properly like taken the ball and run with it. I need to see us win, whatever. I just need to look away. It would be so much healthier.
Yeah. But those open loops create stress and can lead to burnout if you got too many of them going on at the same time. And if we're doing that, we're not just doing that at work. If I ask somebody, one of my kids, to do something and they don't say they've got it right now, are they going to do this? Or are they not going to do it? Or, a friend or a family member or whatever, right? So we've got this going on all the time around us too. It's not just isolated to work. So you can't separate. As nice as it would be to take that little box down, and I'm now in work box mode. And when I leave, I put my work box away.
It would be nice if we had the time and the space and the mental programming to compartmentalize like that, but it's just hard in the age that we live in.
Yes, it is. Do you think
Sure.
we answered their question?
I think we did.
All right. Well, I do not have our typical show notes. Trying to find them behind the scenes to close out our episode. And I, for the life of me, can't remember our tagline that we came up with either.
Crispy is not a career strategy.
Ooh, nailed it. So, a friendly reminder to our listeners, if you have a burning question, you can email it to us at burnoutbanter@gmail.com. And please remember to like or subscribe to the podcast on Amazon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to make sure you never miss an episode. And finally, if your organization's struggling with burnout and stress management, Rochelle and I offer in-house coaching to help your staff get back on track. Try to get that 40% back where people are being not productive. How much money could you make? Lots of money. Reach out to us anytime, LinkedIn or at that Burnout Banter Gmail.
Which is burnoutbanter@gmail.com.
All right, we'll see everybody next month.
We'll see you next month. Remember, crispy is not a career strategy.